All right, through trial and error, I think I finally figured out how to get the Instagram stream to go live. Very exciting. So, first of all, I want to welcome those of you who are watching us live, and I want to invite you to drop a comment below and let us know if you are hearing us. We're going live on 3 networks right now. Actually, more than that, Kendra, because I'm on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram for Miller Marketing, and you said you're live streaming as well. Can you remind me where you're live streaming from?
Yes, I'm live streaming on my YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/@Kendra Corman, and LinkedIn, my personal profile.
Well, so we might be having people come from multiple places. Now, what I don't know is with Restream, which is the service I'm using to live stream right now, if people do comment and if it shows whether they're coming from your stream, from my stream. So I see, like, for example, Christopher Johnson. I'm going to start to pull these up on screen on here, but I see Christopher Johnson coming in. It doesn't say if he's coming from my stream or your stream. I'm fine wherever you're coming from, Christopher. But I was kind of curious if that might be something that we can see. So we'll let those comments continue to roll in. As we are doing that, I want to let our audience know that today we're here talking about how to get a bigger slice of the podcasting pie. And Kendra was one of the first people that I started following with when I was thinking about getting serious about doing a podcast. We've been on each other's shows. She's one of my regularly appearing guests, like on SNL. You know how they have those people that get like the 5 jackets, they come back, Steve Martin and whatnot. Kendra's one of my people that I bring back at least once a year. And I reached out to her recently and I said, it's been a while since you've been on. Let's bring you back. And what do you want to talk about? And we decided on talking about podcast as a subject. So Kendra, there might be some folks that are watching right now, whether live or playback, or maybe even listening to this on the podcast, that haven't heard of you. So why don't you take a few minutes and tell us about yourself, your name, your business, what do you do, who do you help?
Sure. My name is Kendra Corman. My business is kendracorman.com. I have a couple arms underneath that business. One is a full service marketing and advertising agency called H2H Consulting. And the other piece is I do training and education on email marketing, podcasting, and leveraging AI in communications. And it's really all about helping small businesses and nonprofits be more effective and efficient with their communications.
Wonderful. And what a great communication person she is by having such a well polished, well thought out introduction. And I have to give you a compliment too, Kendra. You sound really just excited and like you enjoy what you do. You know how sometimes we go to these networking events and people will introduce themselves and they're like, my name is Kendra Corman and I work for KendraCorman.com, which is AI and marketing, and like they kind of ramble on, but you bring this with us just enthusiasm and passion for your business. So I always enjoy speaking with you and I'm really delighted for our conversation today. Hey, I see the chat is lighting up, so things are happening. Mark Crosby, I was just on your show, Mark. So delighted to see you in the audience here. I see Carrie from Align to Success joining us from Arizona, Lisa joining us from Metro Detroit, and another Christopher joining us from LinkedIn as well. So we'll let those comments continue to roll in, and we're going to kick this conversation off for today. So again, if you're just joining us, we're here today talking about how to get a bigger slice of the podcasting pie. And I know that some of you who are listening may be already doing a podcast. Maybe you're thinking about doing a podcast in the future, but Kendra's a good person to learn from for this. So Kendra, what advice do you have for us?
So I think a couple of things. One, I put in my title that you might have seen pop up that I'm a marketing strategist and a fan of AI. I love AI. I talked a little bit about AI. And I think in the world of AI today, people want more connection, more personal connection, not less. So while AI makes the podcasting process easier, I feel like it allows us to create that know, like, and trust factor without written words, right? People call me all the time and say that, or email me and we connect, and they're like, oh, I feel like I already know you because they've been listening to my podcast, right? So they've heard my voice. Maybe they've seen me on LinkedIn or YouTube and they connect that, right? And I think that that is so fun. And just a really big differentiator. Yes, AI can create podcasts. It's not to the yeah, and yes, it looks good, whatever, but it's still not to that level. It doesn't have that personal connection. And so if you're thinking about starting a podcast, I would strongly recommend that you do start one because it's a lot less crowded too, right? And so, I mean, and Brenda, you have 2 podcasts, right?
I do. One is a limited series, so I wouldn't say it's like a regularly publishing podcast, but I have a main podcast, which this show will go on. It's called Enthusiastically Self-Employed.
And so I think, it's a way less crowded space, blogs and so many other um, media, right? Social
Mhm,
media is just packed with people. And I feel like being able to create that connection with people when they're in the right mind to be listening to you, that they want to hear your tips is just fantastic. So, my
mhm,
first tip is if you're thinking about starting a podcast, start a podcast, right? Because there's no reason not to. My second tip on starting a podcast is you gotta come up with a name. The name is the hardest thing to come up with because it is the one thing you don't wanna change. Everything else about your podcast can change except for the name. And I've been playing around with, and I think I shared it with you. Buzzsprout has a free podcast name generator that is AI generated, and it's actually pretty good. It's given me some amazing suggestions for different ideas. Actually, like an email marketing newsletter I was doing for a client, it's named. So it's got some pretty good and interesting naming ideas to help you brainstorm and get a unique podcasting name. When
mhm,
you're creating the name, find something that nobody else is using, right? Enthusiastically self-employed, I'm
mhm.
guessing is unique on Apple Podcasts, or it
Right.
was when you started, right?
Mhm,
And so when people go to search for it on those top channels, you come up. But if you pick something that a lot of people have, then it gets a little bit crowded
mhm,
and they don't necessarily find you. So that's my second tip. My third tip that I'm going to share with you guys is to be narrow in your focus,
mhm.
but wide enough that it's a lot of what you can cover, right? So if people, well, I should say, so when people first started listening to my podcast, I was all over the place. I didn't know what I was going to be talking about next week, and nobody else did either. And it was just, this is interesting to me at this time, and it's about marketing ish. And so I would have different guests and no real theme and no real guardrails around what I talked about. And so now I talk about email marketing, podcasting, and AI because I do feel that they really link together well when you're working on your marketing, again, to make you more effective and efficient.
So can I ask a question there?
Mhm.
'Cause now that you're saying this, like, I feel like you've had a plan all along. Like,
Yeah.
I admire you as a marketer to fellow marketer, and I feel like her podcast is called Imperfect Marketing, and she talks about marketing from different perspectives and different angles. So now that you're saying that, now maybe I'll have to go back and look through some of your shows, but I did never see it as not cohesive in terms of the concept. But what also heard you saying are the three themes that you're focusing on are also themes for your business and maybe paths for you to grow your business. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very much so. My podcast is one of the top 2 ways right now that I grow my email list. It is probably the most effective way. The other way I do that can sometimes bring in more numbers is Facebook ads. But outside of ads, my podcast is the number one way people start to connect with me, and they'll tell me that they've been listening to me, and that's how I actually get quite a bit of business and people, again, joining my email list that are serious about potentially purchasing services from me.
Hmm, yeah. Which is interesting sometimes too, because you'll get people that you've never heard of before, right? That will reach out to you. I've been listening to your podcast for years. I want to do business with you. How do I sign up? I'm guessing that happens to you.
It does. It
Mhm,
does. They'll email me questions. Again, they get on my email list from something in my podcast, and then they will follow me on LinkedIn or YouTube for a little bit, maybe add a comment here and there. And then it's like, okay, now they're ready to move forward with whatever initiative that they're trying to move forward with. And it just allows um, for business to happen, and they feel like they know what they can expect from me and how I
mhm.
work and how I am and my personality. And I think that that's really important. Again, it's really building that know, like, and trust factor.
Yeah, I love it. And I wanna ask this question too because you've been able to successfully, I'm gonna call it monetize your podcast. And when I first heard that phrase, I was thinking the podcast itself is making money, whether through sponsorships and things like that. But there's many ways of monetizing your podcast, and one is generating listeners that end up becoming clients. And I started my podcast. When did you start yours? I think mine was at the beginning of 2024. Was yours like the year before or 2 years
Yeah,
before?
23 or 22. I don't know. I'm up to episode like 300 and something.
And
And
you're
I
how
was
many
doing
episodes per week right now?
so I started at 1 episode a week, and then I
Mhm.
didn't feel that my listeners were getting enough of my opinion, and so I upped it to 2 times a week, and then I realized that I needed to sleep, and so I took it back down to 1 time a week.
Okay,
So
so that's
right now
good.
we're back at 1.
So you've played with the frequency a little bit. So any advice for people? We're here today talking about how to get a bigger slice of the podcasting pie. And obviously we want to get more listeners on our podcast, but there has to be a means to an end. And for many of us who are self-employed, we would like to continue to bring in income so that we don't have to return to corporate. So we need to monetize and make our podcast one of those paths of doing business. So any advice for us? Do you sell on your show? Are you using it in the call to action at the end, the show notes? Like, how do you plant the seed and tell people about your services and offerings within your podcast?
So sometimes I'm a little bit more intentional than others, but most of the time I'm talking to people to like follow and subscribe. They get updates and they get information about you know, um, like what I'm doing on social, and they'll join my email list because that's usually in the show notes every single time. Some of my resources are in the show notes every single time. So I'm using it as a way again to get people on my email list so that that way I can build a more predictable conversation, right? Showing up every week in their inbox, and that will hopefully lead them to and that's where I do most of my selling rather than actually on the podcast.
Mhm.
Um, I use Buzzsprout, and I think you do too. Or I don't know if you still do.
I do. Yep.
Okay. So I use Buzzsprout, super easy tool, love it. And when I use Buzzsprout, it has dynamic content that I can add at the beginning and end. And so I actually will change up my intro and outro at different times of the year to talk about something if I am selling something specific, like my AI boot camp or something along those lines.
Gotcha. So, what are your thoughts? And I know you've been a guest on other people's podcasts as well, and you probably have picked us up on some best practices. And by the way, I just put for our audience, if you're watching right now, like feel free to drop your podcast in the comments. Tell us the name, who should watch your show, and what it's all about. Because you never know, there might be somebody interested in being a listener on here. But back to you, Kendra. I know you've hosted your own podcast. You've had people come on to interview as guests. You've been guests on other people's podcasts like mine as well, and you're a really great interviewee, I should say, but you've probably seen some faux pas as it relates to podcasting. So what kind of things should we watch out for? Or, some things we shouldn't be doing perhaps that you're noticing.
So the number one thing to not do is to be too structured, right?
Yeah.
This is conversational. You had a couple of ideas of where we were going to go, and you had me introduce myself. Me introducing myself was a lot shorter than whatever bio I would have sent you. Even if you had asked me for 150 words and I gave you 150 words, it takes a lot more time and it has less passion and energy when you're reading what I sent you. And it's probably just eh, right? But I
Mhm.
can tell you a story when I introduce myself. And then creating it in a way that it's conversational, right? That it's not so structured. I used to structure every single interview. I had listed questions that I asked my guests. It was very robotic. And I was constantly thinking about the next question, not
That's
what they
funny.
were saying, because
Yeah.
I didn't wanna have that conversation with them. I've guested on podcasts that have done this too, and I feel bad because they're usually more towards the beginning, but podcasting has just allowed me to listen better in every situation,
Mhm.
and I was recently doing a AI panel, I was a moderator, Someone came up to me afterwards and said, "I just wanna say that that was amazing. You kept it very conversational with the panelists, and it was really cool how you just, rolled with the conversation and followed up." And I was like, "That is due to my podcast. Thank
Yeah.
you."
Well,
Right?
and it's
And
it's by having that. And I remember back in Toastmasters, we would practice like impromptu speaking, and the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And I think the more that you interview people, the more comfortable you get at it, and you find it. I'm sure you find it to be a more enjoyable experience. And to your point, like I came in like, what do you want to talk about? Like, tell us your advice. But I really want to learn from you, so I kind of like going down that path. And I'm assuming it's probably the same way for you as well. It's more enjoyable for you as an interviewer.
yes, I
Mhm.
love it when I get people on that can share things, and I especially like it when people share things that are different from my opinion. Right? Because it really gives me an opportunity to learn and hear a different perspective in a way that could really benefit me and my clients eventually. So, it's a lot of fun. I love to learn. If you've ever taken Strengths Finders, I don't know if you've ever done that, personality test, but one of my top skills is learner, and I love to learn. I mean, I could go to school all day, every day. That's my passion, and l podcasting with guests allows me to do that.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, great skill that you're picking up, being a lifelong learner. It's fitting into your values and what you enjoy doing, all that. And we're here today talking about getting a bigger slice of the podcasting pie. So let's kind of shift gears and back into the podcast and talk about some metrics or maybe some goals that people might have, or maybe even some tips on how to get more viewers, not viewers, how to get more listeners on there, how to get more topics that are bringing people back. I don't know about you, Kendra, but when I open up my podcast player app, I go on multiple walks a day with Pepper, and I'm usually rotating through the playlist and I look for recent episodes. And there's certain things like if I see your show, I'm always listening to it. Yours is one. Mark Crosby, who's watching, is another one. Annette Richmond's is another one. So there's certain techniques that I know these people are doing on their show that's causing me to listen to this. So what advice do you have on getting more listeners to your podcast?
So, if you're looking to grow your listeners or start a podcast where you get a bunch of listeners, the first thing to do is you need to have at least some sort of guest format, right? You have to accept guests. You can do some solo shows, and I encourage that because you want to showcase your expertise. And a lot of times when you're interviewing somebody, you don't necessarily get all of that opportunity to showcase your knowledge and expertise. So, but having at least a few guest episodes regularly really does help because most podcast guests will share about the fact that they're on your podcast, and that helps lure other people in and it gets a hold of their audience so that they're exposed to you.
Yeah, that's a good
Another
point.
tip is to be focused. Know who you're talking to and then talk to them. I get that you can probably do a million different things, right? You can probably serve a million different people, and everyone is not a target audience, right? So think about who you're talking to and then just talk to them because they'll feel like they're being heard by you and that you're delivering content that adds value to them. And that's what's going to create that relationship and that know, like, and trust that you really, really need. So that's two of the tips, right? So,
Yeah.
and then the third one is consistency. Now, I'm not going to say it's weekly, right? I'm not going to say it's biweekly. It, I would say monthly is getting a little bit light, but I
Mhm,
would say at least but every 10 to 14 days, again, pick your schedule, that you would release one new episode.
mhm,
Because again, you're going on multiple walks a day with Pepper. You're looking to see who has a new and recent episode.
mhm.
So that's important, right? If you don't see stuff from that person, you'll be like, "What is this?" Yeah. And
Right.
so I think that's really important. And you do yours how often? Because 'Cause I'm once a week.
I'm usually once a week, but I'm not so beholden to every single week. And I'll be honest, there's some days where it goes 10 to 14 days between episodes, and then I'll publish on a Friday, and then I'll publish again on a Monday. And recently I had a guest, Quinn Conyers. I was interviewing her. The live stream wasn't working. So I think I published it 3 days after my last show. And I might be mistaken, Quinn, if you're listening, if I haven't published it yet, it's coming up. And I remember pulling it down and getting it into the queue for it. But I have noticed because I do open up that podcast player up multiple times a day, most people are publishing like Sunday or Monday. There's a few Tuesday, some Wednesdays and
On
Thursday shows.
Thursday.
Are
Yeah,
you Thursday?
I'm
Okay. And
Thursday.
is there rationale for that? Like when's the best day to publish, or is it just like getting into that behavior of publishing always on that same day? What do you think?
So I think it's about the behavior of publishing on that same day. A lot of people publish Sunday, Monday because they want to do the beginning of the week. My email newsletter used to be 100% about my podcast for a long time. And because of that, since that was on Thursdays, that's when I decided to release it. And I just leave it there for the predictability. But
Mm,
going back to what you said about the every like 10 to 14 days on average, that is the most common release schedule according to some research that I read on podcasting stats. And I'm trying to remember which podcasting stats these were from because I do read a lot of
was it
stuff.
Buzzsprout or one of those like big names or something?
Probably. I think it
Yeah.
might have been from Buzzsprout, and they said that the majority of podcasts release every 10 to 14 days. So there's nothing wrong with picking a schedule that's convenient for you.
Mhm.
And similar to email marketing, if you skip a week, people probably didn't notice,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And so you can adjust it to your life and not freak out, right? That, oh my God, I'm gonna not make it.
Yeah. I have to, tell you, I've been like I sing your praises all the time. I think you know that, and I'm always sending people to you, and especially when AI and marketing comes up as a topic, I'm tagging you into posts and whatnot.
Thank
But you
you.
had a show recently, and I don't know if you remember the name of the guest, but they were talking about email marketing, and they were discussing that they've increased their email frequency to 3 times a week, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was at first I was like, "That's too much." And then you know what? I started doing it. And what I found is that I'm actually getting more inbound inquiries for my business as a result. I'm getting a couple more opt outs, but honestly, the people that are opting out were probably never going to do business with me anyway. And I'm not making it such a pressurized, it needs to have 5 topics and sections and all. Like some the other day I did an email, Kendra, and it was like my Aunt Linda reads my emails. And I picked that up from you because you have such a conversational style with what you do. So I love that we're here talking about how to get a bigger slice of the podcasting pie, but I know you for email marketing. And I just have to thank you for that. Anything you'd
Thank
like
you.
to add to that?
Thank you. So, the reason I actually started my podcast was for my email marketing. And it was so that I had content and didn't have to think too hard about it. And
Mhm,
so, and then for my social media. So I actually started podcasting because I wanted to make my marketing easier for me so that I had content for emails and then I had content for social media. I break every podcast into probably close to 10 different pieces of content
mhm,
that goes a bunch of different places. Right. And I think especially for those of us that are self-employed, solopreneurs, even smaller size businesses that have maybe one person that's doing, 17 different things. Cause I don't know anybody that's not doing 17 different things in their jobs right now.
mhm.
We need things that are going to make our lives easier. And podcasting is a fantastic way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I love how you're using it, creating content once, and then you're merchandising it in multiple places through your email and social posts and whatnot. Can you also talk about batch recording? Because I think you talked about this. If I'm not mistaken, was it today's email or yesterday's email? You were
It's
talking
today.
about that. So can you remind us what your thoughts are on batch recording?
So I batch record so that I can sort of set it and forget it because a couple things. One, I used to allow people to schedule recordings all throughout my calendar. And so I had to do my hair every day. I had to do my
Yeah.
makeup every day. I had to do, just, I know it sounds like it's totally first world problems, but
It's a
whatever.
girly
That was my
problem. They don't have these problems.
this is my getting ready drama. Okay. So I didn't want to do that all the time. And so I started focusing and doing my podcast recordings really just on Mondays for the most part.
Yeah.
And I would just record all of them that way. It gets me into a flow, right? So that
Mm,
I can ask my guests questions and I actually start to get energized through them as I go. But it takes the pressure off so that I don't actually have to think about my podcast necessarily if I don't want to until
mhm.
the next time I have to record. And that's usually like once a month because I do 4 to 5 recordings on a Monday on
Okay.
average.
So on
Mhm.
those recording days, because I'm thinking about moving to this in 2026, instead of doing live stream, just doing a recording for the interviewees. Are you doing like back to back, or are you doing like a 15-minute, 30-minute break in between? What are best practices there so you're not getting like burned out? What do you think?
So I book an hour for each of my podcast guests. My episodes are 30 minutes or less
Okay.
because the ones that were an hour, people stopped listening at the 30-minute mark. And it was really
Mhm.
good stuff. And so anyway, I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to make that if people aren't going to listen to it. So I started cutting my podcast down to 30 minutes. And so I have an hour booked, but we're only recording for 30 minutes. So we take 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning to warm up. And then usually I get 15 to 20 minutes at the back end to be able to do any bio breaks and stuff like that. Currently, I do have a 30-minute buffer in between them. I don't like that. And I'm actually getting rid of that because I don't need that full hour break. I'm
Yeah.
basically getting that anyway.
Okay, good. I think I'm going to follow the Kendra Corman school of thought on podcasting, batch scheduling. I think that's a really great approach to take. So we're going to start to wind down our conversation for today. And if you're just joining us now, you can still watch the full playback later. But we're here today talking about how to get a bigger slice of the podcasting pie. Now, Kendra, first, if people are interested in working with you, can you remind us what are those services and offerings, and where can we go to learn more about doing business with you?
Yes, of course. So you can learn more about me at kendracorman.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, which I think you have my LinkedIn. That's a great place to reach me because that's where I'm most active. And you can check out my website for a bunch of different resources. But I do one on one coaching and I offer some podcasting courses every once in a while, like 2 times a year on average. And I have an AI boot camp that allows people to learn to leverage AI more.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kendra. And Kendra, you and I are also we're part of the Fab Five, the Informed Troy Affinity Group. Kendra, once a year, will do a presentation on something related to things that she knows. And last year, she did a presentation on creating a presentation using AI, and she actually demonstrated it live. And I did one afterwards using AI, and it was such a powerful, amazing presentation. So I have to say, I value this woman so much, and I'm always referring people over to her, and I just think the world of you, Kendra. So thank you again for being on. Now, are you open to anyone connecting with you on LinkedIn, and do you have any requests or things that they should know if they do invite you to connect?
Yes. So first off, I'm also a big, huge fangirl of Brenda, as she knows, because I just actually had a power hour with her right before we jumped onto this. But if you want to connect with me, yes, I'm open to anybody connecting with me. The biggest thing and the term that I learned from you is no pitch slaps. I
Mhm.
want to know, like, and trust people before I work with them. So let's build a relationship first. And then if you need stuff from me, let me know. And I'm always happy to help people out where I can.
Wonderful. And if you do have premium on LinkedIn, you can add a note to your invitations. Mention to Kendra that you heard her on my show. If you don't have premium, or if you've run out of those credits, to add a note just after she accept, just say, "Hey, I heard you on the live stream or the podcast with Brenda," so that way she'll know from where you came.
Yes, do not say you can improve my YouTube channel and show me all the different ways after we immediately connect.
It's too funny. It's such a common thing with people pitching, right? And I was talking to you about this before in the show too, like the email irrelevant pitches, like they're not even looking at it, but we're all about relevancy and building that relationship. So as we wrap up today, Kendra, we were talking about getting a bigger slice of the podcasting pie, intentional nod to pie here, because I love pie. Any final comments for us? And there's a few people that are watching today that are thinking about starting a podcast. So maybe speak to them.
So definitely get started, right? Name your podcast, create a description, leverage Canva to create the art, the description, everything can change. Your frequency can change, right? Think about what's going to work for you. Get started talking to your audience and building that now because it's one of those things like building an email list or building a pipeline of clients and leads that you'll wish you started yesterday, right? And so the next best time is today. So
Yeah.
let's get started and get it done.
Love it. And it reminds me of a quote. I think it's Karen Lamb, if I'm not mistaken. A year from now, you wish you had started today. A year from now, you wish you had listened to Kendra's advice and started your podcast today. Everyone's going to be a little nervous at the beginning, right, Kendra? But just jump in. The water's fine.
Do not listen to my beginning episodes. They were horrible. They've gotten so much better. But that's what we do, right? We
Yeah.
evolve. And And that's okay. You're allowed to do that, and your podcast and your listeners will grow with you.
Yeah. And remind us the name of your podcast. I don't think I asked you about that directly, but what's the name of your podcast again?
Podcast is called Imperfect Marketing. You can find it on my YouTube channel, which is at Kendra Corman, or you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Kendra. It's been a delight. And I want to thank all of the folks that are watching us here today. We would love it if, as soon as you're done watching this video, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, if you could click on the share button afterwards. And this is a really great advice if you've never posted on LinkedIn, or if you haven't posted yet this week, this month, or even this year. Just click on the post icon at the bottom and then share it along with your network and tell people something that you learned by watching, or maybe who should watch the video as well. It's a really great technique of generating content for you at the same time. With that said, I want to thank everyone so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you all on LinkedIn, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Kendra.
Bye.
Let's try that again.
I was like, I was just relaxing.
Twice. Let's try that one.